Redditors who have hired a private investigator, what did you find out? I have a story about private investigators doing a hilariously shit job. So, years ago, my brother injured his back at work because of his employer's unsafe work practices. During the ensuing suit, my brother's lawyer was given a folder full of documents from the employer's team. Turns out, they had hired a PI to investigate my brother to prove that his injury was faked. Well, unfortunately, the PI had been taking pictures of me operating an ATV-mounted leaf hopper. My brother walked into the court hearing and watched the color drain from the opposing lawyers' faces when he introduced himself, looking nothing like me. Not me, but my grandmother hired a PI back in the 90s to catch my granddad cheating. It uncovered he had been cheating with multiple other women, and he even has a daughter with another woman who is the same age as my mum, who is the middle child of 5. My grandfather once hired a PI to investigate my grandmother. While spying on her from his car, another investigator he knew came up frantically to his window and was like, "What are you doing here?" To which his response was obviously, "What are you doing here?" Turns out my grandmother was being investigated by the D for drug dealing. I don't think anything came of it that I know of, but we are all pretty certain it's the reason the old family barn was burned down. That woman is batshit crazy, and this isn't even the worst/wackiest story I've been told about her. I did not. A friend did to check if the husband was cheating on her as he flirted with one girl they both worked with. This was the source of many arguments. Well, the PI had a huge zoom lens and got some very explicit images of the husband having outdoor sex with the girl. Somehow the wife forgave him. They are still together. One of my jobs is to search for long lost relatives, usually several generations ago. Typically, the case is about old plots of land where I should track down owners or their heirs to update the land registry because a state wants to build there something. Let me tell you, the amount of information you can find on Google and in public records is astounding if you know where to look. I know someone that hired a pet detective to find their cat, and he fucking found him. Not me, but a friend hired one because he was suspicious his stepdad was being unfaithful to his mom. So, he asked me, and I put him in contact with a guy I knew. Bit of a backstory, the stepdad is 5'10", 160-ish pounds. My friend is 6'2", 235 pounds, ripped. At 15, when my friend's mom and stepdad started dating, my friend gave her the typical "yow hurt her, yow speech. Also, his BO dad walked out on him and his sister when my friend was like 4. It took a while, but my friend warmed up to the guy and hail as a good guy, took my friend and I to an 49's game once, which was pretty cool. Anyways, the PI said he was not cheating. Apparently there was a house on the market that my friend's mom wanted, and he bought it. He had been remodeling it for some time, and he kept it a secret. As a 5-year anniversary gift to her, he bought it. Anyways, they live in a 5-bed house now. I had a girlfriend that worked for one for a while. She said that the majority of their work was insurance scams. She took a lot of pictures of guys who said they were hurt on the job playing golf and surfing and such. Even in 2020 I struggled to picture a private investigator as anything but a man in a beige trench coat and a trilby. My dad hired a PI in the mid-90s in Eastern Europe to find out if one of his business partners was stealing from him. Instead, he found out his own brother was stealing from him. He refused to believe the PI, and his brother robbed him blind, took a huge amount of money, and left him with gigantic debt. He still forgave him. I was a private investigator for a little bit. Most work PIs do is searching financial/court records and serving documents. But one time I was paid by wealthy parents to stake out their college senior who had stopped returning their calls. They were worried about her. These parents paid like $40K for round-the-clock monitoring just to find out their daughter dropped out of school and was a full-time ski bum. BTW stakeouts are mostly just sitting in your car eating all day Had a babysitter we thought was stealing from us. Luckily our neighbor was a pie couple and they ran a background check for $10. Babysitter had a string of DUIs and a few days before a large fine was due, my camera disappeared. He also stole money from my kids' piggy banks. He sort of disappeared, but was also really into Instagram, so I surreptitiously followed him. He started babysitting again for a single mom, easy target, and posted a lot of ooh pics with this family. I tracked down the mom and sent her a long email detailing out his whole scam. She said we were right and it was clear he had been stealing from her business. He has since gone underground, but I still Google him regularly to see what Henna's up to. Henna has been able to avoid arrests for a while now. Back in the 90s my dad had a friend who owned an old Clio Williams, and one day someone stole his car. The car was located in Athens. So after reporting the event to the police he really wanted to get his car back, because it was expensive, and he hired a private investigator to find his car. After like a week he received a call from the investigator telling him that his car was located at a junkyard outside of Thessaloniki. So he went at Thessaloniki and found his car, so he rushed inside a police station to inform them that his car is located at X location. Believe it or not, the officer told him not to mess with the owner of the junkyard. This junkyard was known for stealing cars etc. and hoped he will get his money back from insurance. Edit. Sorry for any mistakes, I'm not a native speaker. My oldest niece's dad married a woman who was controlling. She ended up convincing him to take my sister to court for full custody of my niece, which ended up stressing my sister out so much that her water broke at 29 weeks. My parents hired a pie and found out that his wife was using it to buy groceries instead of the money he was giving her, and that she was getting prescriptions from 12 different doctors and a bunch of other fucked up shit. He ended up contacting her parents, who he was told were dead. After he introduced himself, her dad immediately asked how much she took from him. He wasn't the first guy she had done it to. She also wasn't using her real name. He ended up divorcing her, and she's currently doing time in prison for a handful of charges. My parents hired a private investigator to find out who my online BF was when I was 13. The pie came back and told us he was just a fat ass 13-year-old Feo. My sister, mid-30s, is adopted and hired one to find her estranged biological father. They came back saying that not only was he still alive and nearby, but he had a daughter, meaning she also had a biological sibling. Further digging from the pie uncovered that they weren't just similar ages either, they were exactly the same age. The evidence suggested that my sister had a twin and her birth father had taken the twin and vanished. Huge, life-changing news. Eventually, through more incredible detective work, the pie realized that the daughter was actually just my sister. There was no other sibling, and they had just been investigating my sister the whole time accidentally. Needless to say, we asked for the money back. TL. Doctor, sister hired a private investigator. Private investigator accidentally investigated sister. My grandmother's first boyfriend after my grandfather died said he was a retired cop and a veteran. They enjoy dancing to country music together and bought a new car in her name though, even though she can't drive anymore. My uncle's hired a pie. Turns out that old bastard had a habit of shacking up with widows and bleeding them dry. The boyfriend, not the pie. Hadn't heard from my mom since I was about 15, very unstable due to drugs and alcohol etc. When I was 29 I decided it was time to find out what happened to her. I figured if she was a Jane Doe somewhere then I could put her to rest, and if she was alive then I wanted to let her know that I forgave her. Hired a pie to help. I guess she was moved by my story, and so she also ran info for the man my mother was apparently married to on the house. And with one clue from his report I was able to track them down. I wouldn't have found my mom alive and was just starting out on recovery after being homeless and addicted for many years if it wasn't for the pie who kindly ran an extra report for free. Mom has remained sober now for about 7 years and is probably the healthiest she's ever been, physically and emotionally. A pie tried to contact me about my father a few years ago. She was extremely rude and pushy and intimidated my sweet mother by showing her a pistol she wore on her waistband. She called me once, yelling at me about why I was hiding from her, calling me my father's name. Took her 5 minutes to stop talking long enough for me to explain who I was. Warned her that if she ever threatened my mother again, I was just as armed and I'd call an actual police officer to calm her ass down. She never bothered us again. I know somebody who was like an assistant to the actual pie. She basically went to bingo with a camera in her purse to capture video of a woman. The woman claimed that a car accident had completely immobilized her. But she would take off the neck brace all the time, playing bingo hours on end. Nothing exciting, just capturing fraud.